which is
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, okay. So we will talk about our vulnerability management.
Okay.
So this is the last topic in the entire sessions, the row of sessions which we had. Um, and then this is like one of the most crucial pieces which kind of ties back to SOC and its activities, because everything kind of interlinks with what vulnerability management or what vulnerabilities are associated with the applications, appliances, or the tools which you're using about. So vulnerability management again is nothing but your process to uh, identify the vulnerabilities, like perform regular scans, identify the vulnerabilities, eliminate, mitigate, or tolerate them, based upon the risk appetite which you have in your organization. So if say suppose you have got like vulnerabilities, which is any recent vulnerabilities like Windows 0 day, so you need to go back in and understand with your organization how faster do you want to remediate or even patch that. So suppose you have a patch available, so you the vulnerability teams are constantly scanning the environment, either using Qualys, Nessus, or any other tool which is out there for vulnerability management. They scan the environment, they get the list of vulnerabilities. They rate the vulnerabilities based on severity and the impact and the yeah, based on the impact of the vulnerabilities ever exploited. So again, the decision is always based upon the risk and the cost associated with the fixing the vulnerability. So that's exactly what is needs to be done. So at a high level, the intelligent confluence of assessment, what asserts, plus analysis, what to fix first, and then remediation, what problem am I trying to fix, right? Is all these three components are tied together uh, in the vulnerability management. That's how the decision is making. So first is like if you say suppose you have a web server which is facing the internet and is the initial landing page for a user, right? If you have a vulnerability there, what would you do? How would you assess your risk there, right? I mean, like you find out what assets are having the vulnerability. Then you analyze, like I've got 10 vulnerabilities in that server. I've got other 4 or 5 different servers which have got similar vulnerabilities, but they're internal. But this one particular web server is actually facing the internals. Which one do I fix first, right? You take the call, and then you go about remediating those machines based on the criticality and the risk factor. um, so the reason why we say that, though it's a critical internet facing, we need to go and talk to the business as well. Hey, you know what, I'm going to take this server down, which will also take your website down for say suppose 10-15 minutes. Do we have that bandwidth to kind of take the website down, like for patching? So you might have seen that whenever you access a website, sometimes you get an error message that this site is under maintenance or something like that. So it means there is some maintenance or scheduled maintenance or a patching activity going on which needs a server reboot. So it means you need to go and talk to the business owners and tell them that this is what I am trying to do, and this is the vulnerability which I'm trying to fix. If I don't fix, what's the impact and what's the risk? And if by taking down the server, business needs to kind of calculate how much loss they'll incur, whether the loss is ever comparable uh, to the vulnerability or patching which is happening now, right?
Okay.
So let's look at the vulnerability management life cycles. First is establish, you have policy here, and then you have your inventory, you prioritize it, you identify the vulnerabilities, you have the threats which can take the advantage of the vulnerabilities, you have the risk which you calculate the risk of these vulnerabilities being ever exploited, then you follow the remediation, then you measure the impact about patching, and then you do a compliance check. So in the policy, so you need to identify like all the processes, like start from scanning, who should do scanning, how often the scanning should happen, yeah, how often the scanning should happen. And then after identification of scanning, how long do you have to fix vulnerabilities based on the severity. So if you have a critical patch, and you confirm that the patch is applicable to one particular server, how long does the infrastructure team has before they go and patch it? So it can be from say 1 day to 2 days for a critical. For high, it can be, say, suppose 3 to 4 days, and then for medium it will be like longer than that, and then for information or low level patches, it can be anywhere from 30, 60, 90 days, right? So you establish that guidelines, like whenever you report something, you should have a vulnerability meeting. How you kind of if how do you kind of report this vulnerability to the business, and if the business is not willing to kind of apply a patch, how do you take kind of consent from them, saying that you need to sign off on the risk, because this is what has happened. And then if a breach happens, the security team is not responsible for it, but the business is responsible for for that particular incident, right? Then you have the inventory. You need to really go and find out how many assets do you have in your entire organization, so that you can go and start creating an inventory of the applications, of the servers, of what operating systems they run. Though the scanning will be able to tell you, but for you to go and what do you call, prioritize the uh, servers, say that you can have a critical group where you can have a patching group where it's called, a scanning group which is called critical, where they have all web servers or DMZ facing web servers which are like highly critical, which face the internet, and any downtime will actually impact the business operations in the backend, right? So again, you find out the inventory, then you prioritize it based on the business goals. As I said, right now, like any web server or any crucial server which is serving the customers, or for the fact users, take precedence, right? Then you do the perform the vulnerability scans, and then you identify the vulnerabilities which are applicable on the servers. And then once you have the reports, you go back and figure out how much of these threats are actually exploitable, like who can come back and exploit this. Is it the vulnerability which is found out, is it a real risk for me? And if it is, uh, on a how much percentage is my risk, how risky is that? And that's the sixth step, is what you determine the risk level. So you take the asset priority, you take the vulnerability, and you take the threat percentage. So you take all those values and then you add it up, then you'll determine a risk level, a risk number. You come up with a risk figure, which is a numerical number. And then based on the risk number which you have, you should have a predefined uh, guideline or a table which says that anything about this number is a high critical, or a very severe one which you need to go patch it like immediately. Then then you need to kind of hold on a second, sorry. Yep. Then you need to go and start remediating those, a bit, like identifying the risk. Then based on the remediation will also come back based on the risk score which you have. So highest score, say suppose it's very critical, then they get remediated first, and then they'll take care of the rest ones as the time progresses or as per the SLAs. Once you are done with the remediation plan or fixing the vulnerabilities, you go and measure it. It means you perform another scan. So you perform another deep scan, and then you identify whether the same vulnerability is being highlighted again. If it is highlighted, it means the patching did not work well, and then you still have the risk of the vulnerability being exploited again. And then once you have the once you perform the measuring, then you will come back and you will say that how much compliant you are, right? With the regulators, the PCI DSS, HIPAA, uh, the SABSA and the CORBA and everything else, all the compliances, or the GDPR for that matter, all the compliance items you'll have to require that you have these many critical numbers, or you should patch within these days. You go and comply to that. So what is the successful approach of effective VM strategy? So first of approach is prioritize your assets. You need to identify what assets do I have in my organizations, what is the priority of it, and then and then like if a business says this is critical to me, you need to go and rate them and understand everything about these particular assets. Then determine the risk level. You take the asset value, you take the threat percentage, and you take the vulnerabilities you have. You kind of understand the risk level for and then start the patching. Then remediate vulnerabilities. You need to quickly identify, even if it is 0 day, keep active scans going on, keep reviewing your vulnerability report, and then based on the vulnerability report, you will have to go and what do you call, prioritize the patching with the IT team so that they understand which ones needs to be patched first, and then uh, so that you have your patching cycle going smoothly, and then you're meeting your SLAs. And then the last key step is you always measure. You always do a rescan, or perform rescan, or do some proactive testing on it, like with multiple scripts, which will kind of mimic the attacking behavior, and then see if the exploit still works or not. So asset. So the always so we spoke about like asset being very crucial part of understanding how much risk it poses, or the vulnerability poses. So a function, task capability, equipment, or information that has value to the organization, or support the ability of the organization to conduct business. So it can be your file server, it can be your data files, or crucial information which is lying on a drive. um, any process which is running also will also be part of an asset. So if, say, suppose you have a script which is a very crucial script. Let's say suppose somebody deletes it and you don't have a backup copy of it. What is the impact an organization will have if that crucial script has been deleted and you don't have a backup, is by the measure of how much time it takes to rebuild the script, and then how much time will I be able to take to recover or restart the script, and then you resume my local operations, or like resume the operations. Usually the difference between a company going out of business and staying in business is as much as like how quickly it can, after a breach or after an incident, how faster it can recover from the incident, and go back to performing normal operations. Again, a threat, circumstance, or an event that has a potential to cause damage to an organization asset. So yeah, yep. So again, that's a threat, which has a potential to cause damage to an organization asset or to the business function, right? Then vulnerability is a design flaw, or a vulnerability, or like or a bug in the system, or a flaw in the system, which actually the attacker take advantages of. So again, when you say prioritize, you again prioritize based on the business value to the assets, right? So as I clearly mentioned, like if you have any servers which are crucial, and then which manage what do you call or handle a lot of crucial credit card operations or something like that, those are assets which have got highest priority. So asset prioritization, let's talk about that. So identify an asset. So how do you identify an asset? Is like, first identify the network, logically grouping of devices, connect none, LAN, or broadband or wireless. So when you say logical grouping of devices, so you always want to kind of identify department wise networks, right? So what you want to do is you want to say that finance servers or finance users will be all part of one logical group, or finance servers, or any servers which are used by finance team to perform some operations like payroll operations, will be part of one group, so that it's easily identifiable, and I'm not always guessing like, okay, what are these servers part of, right? Then you have your network devices, which is like wireless access point, router, switches. You identify these ones, identify which are crucial for connecting the networks, and then you always want to keep them up, or have the list handy. Then you also need to have a list of all the operating systems which you use, like the Windows, Unix, Linux, Red Hats, or anything else which you have in your organization, which are used by the employees. Then the application, like your web applications or any databases which you're running, which act like a backend for all your applications, or for uh, storing the user's data, or for like running, having shared drive, which is like more like a team's repository of data, which again the team uses. Or uh, yeah, so all these applications needs to be figured out, because all the applications will any applications will have a vulnerability. Again, if it's handling web services, obviously it will have vulnerabilities, and that's what attacker tries to usually exploit. Then you need to keep the version numbers updated for all the applications which you have, and the firmwares which you have. So that's a key, because you will, once you identify a vulnerability, you will identify what versions does the vulnerability impact. So if you are not running a vulnerable version of the application, you don't need to worry, right? Till the time when the new vulnerability comes up and then starts impacting the version which you are running actually in your environment. Then you have network-based discovery. You can perform network discovery, can perform nmap scans to figure out how many machines are still alive. um, and then what are the IP ranges for all these things, and then uh, I mean, like, what type of IP ranges do I have? And then all the different devices which my scan can figure out, right? Sometimes there are devices which are not part of the inventory, but can come up as part of our network discovery. Then you have your agent-based discovery, like in-depth review of applications and patch level. Deploy. You have like disadvantages as well. So what you do is you have your scanning agents deployed across the environment, even on desktops and servers, which will actually kind of act as a uh, information gathering for a local machine kind of thing, which kind of reports it to the central server. So these agents kind of act like a they gather a lot of information from the endpoint, and then based on application patching level and everything else, and then give out the information about the risk level for an agent, for a asset. Network based and agent based discovery techniques are optimal. So you have your network based scans, right? When you scan the network, you kind of identify what devices are there based on the fingerprinting. So you'll know whether it's a network switch, or a router, or whatever that is. And then you can identify whether you ever have placed a network switch or router in that location. And if you find a rogue device there, you should be able to go fetch it, and probably um, isolate that from connecting to the network. And then your scanning frequencies, like how frequently do you want to scan? Can you perform like intensive scans continuously, daily or weekly, again based on the asset, because if the asset is performing other crucial jobs, performing scans would actually limit take up the CPU utilization, and then probably hamper the operations which the server is usually performing. Any questions so far, guys?
No.
Then you have correlation of threats. So what happens with vulnerability management is, when you run a scan and you identify vulnerabilities, um, you you will come up with, like, once you identify the vulnerabilities, you always correlate that. SOC team is usually correlating that with the threats which they are seeing in the wild, or any attempts to exploit that vulnerability, right? So let's say, suppose you have a Citrix ADC vulnerability, which again, Citrix is used in a lot of organizations, and attacker would simply go and start performing scans for all Citrix based devices on the internet. And if you are using Citrix, and you are using Citrix ADC example, then the SOC team will be very alert in terms of identifying all the activity which is happening, and anything which kind of triggers an alert for them for Citrix ADC type of vulnerability, they'll take immediate action in terms of blocking an IP addresses, or look at the options of patching, recommending patching for this vulnerability. So this vulnerabilities which kind of get identified works as a cross correlation for the SOC team. As I said, they take it up, compare with what signatures are they seeing in terms of IDS IPS alerts, and then really figure out what's the threat landscape looks like for us. So again, we correlate threats. So we identify threats like worms, exploits, wide-scale attacks, new vulnerabilities, correlate with most critical stuff. You prioritize, or say suppose these are critical alerts and anything happens for these, any alerts for these ones, please trigger, and then you go and compare, what vulnerabilities were triggered, what vulnerabilities that server has, and then you start ignoring anything which, like a technology which which the server is not running. You will probably basically go ahead and disable that alert or disable the signature so that it doesn't trigger again. Then again, as I mentioned earlier, you determine the risk level is all by understanding the asset value. Once you are having prioritized your service, then you identify the vulnerabilities, and then you identify the threats which you have. So when you calculate, or sum up those or multiply all these numbers, you end up at a risk score, which is again usually provided to uh, a, a particular potential threat or potential risk, and then based on that you take a call of, okay, let me go ahead and patch it ASAP, which is I'll do it right away, call up all the IT folks, and then have them install the patches, and then have them test quickly and within an hour or so, and then figure out and talk to the IT teams to go and patch them immediately. So this is a very crucial step. You need to identify the risk. The risks can be the risk, again, as I said, the risk can vary based on the location of the asset. If the asset is in a location which is internal to an organization, yes, the risk might be low. But if the asset is on the perimeter of the network, and it is handling some of the crucial traffic for the application or for the business, then then the risk will be proportionately very high for that. Any questions, guys?
No.
Okay. So then you have your risk calculation. As I said, you have your vulnerabilities, your assets, and then your threat as well. So when you do a calculation of all these things, you identify, measure it, and you perform the calculation, you'll end up at a VAT score is what it says, and then criticality of the VAT, and then based on that you can identify what's the true risk for us. Remediation, again, as I mentioned, the remediation factor is crucial. Once you identify a server, once you identify a risk, you quickly need to figure out a game plan, and then go and start implementing the changes. If it's a 0-day, and then you identify it, and then if the operating system or the Microsoft or for any other vendor has released a 0-day patch, you would want to kind of go and straight away patch it. Again, taking your approach saying that anything which is critical will get patched first, high severity or a high asset value will get patched next, and then so on and so forth. So you will try to make up a plan, remediate those, fix those vulnerabilities, apply those patches, ensure that this operations are running, services up and running, and then you kind of test them by or like measure the remediation effort, right, by performing another scan or performing by a test. So in a summary, all assets are not equally created. That's exactly we all know about, right? So any server which is on the perimeter is actually, or in the DMZ zone, is actually crucial. anything which is and which is at the interior is of less risk or less asset value. So, and again, you cannot protect all the threats. You just try to identify them as much as possible by performing your regular scan, identifying what technologies are you using, you keeping your technologies up to date, you keeping your asset library up to date, and telling or ensuring that you are part of all the activities, like any new deployments or any new applications which is in the environment, you know about them as much as possible. So you can start anywhere. Vulnerability management is a big area. You can simply start by performing or understanding the technologies in your environment. Just scan them, understand, review them, and then keep asking them. And then make a list for yourself as to what really is out there in your environment, and what you should be worried about. Again, since it's the last part, as you said, it's a comprehensive process. Is like, it's crucial that you manage your vulnerabilities effectively, smartly, so that you're not leaving your vulnerabilities open, and then that has been taken advantage of. So 10 steps for effective vulnerability management is: identify all the asserts in your purview, create a asset criticality profile. Yes, determine exposure and vulnerability. So once you identify the asserts, critical profiles, and you identify critical asserts, then you identify what's the risk and vulnerabilities that particular device or asset has. uh, Again, you track relevant threats, how those vulnerabilities have been exploited in the wild. If you have a POC, how do you perform that testing in your own environment, in a staging or a testing, or in a lab environment. And then you determine the risk, union of vulnerabilities, assets, and threats, sorry, is part of your risk assessment. um, Take corrective actions if risk is greater than the cost to eliminate the or mitigate the risks. That's the formula. So if your risk cost is higher than the cost of the asset, uh, versus the cost, not the asset but the cost, right? So then you need to go with uh, what do you call, fixing the risk rather than looking at the cost. So example can be, if your asset is like, suppose $2,000, and then the vulnerability which you have in place, or multiple vulnerabilities which you have in place, if you want to go fix them, you will have to spend, say, suppose double the amount of like $15,000 or $20,000 or more than that to kind of fix that. Then you'll not be able to justify the cost, right? Create meaningful metrics and hold people accountable. So you can have you can create a metrics which will say that, okay, these many servers have these many vulnerabilities, these are the cruciality, these are the severity, these are the patches which have not been patched in last 90 days, 30 days, 90 days, 10 days, and so that management really understands what's really happening. And if you have a patching gap, you can push the IT team to go and really kind of work and then implement the patches. Create meaningful metrics, and yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm repeating now. Identify and address compliance gaps. So once you perform all these gaps and you report it, you still have gaps in terms of your asset discovery. You identify those asset discoveries, you identify of people plugging about like rogue devices, or if you like have like the management of the business says, no, I cannot patch this. That's a risk which you have to, like, compliance gap, right? You have to kind of note that and understand, my compliance says you need to have patches like T-1 patch, or the less than one patch, like latest to lesser than one patch can be on the system, and that's fine with the compliance. You need to go figure out that how many of the machines are out of compliance, having older patches, and needs to get patched, or like identify all the operating system which are end of life, and you are trying to upgrade them, right? Implement automated vulnerability management system. Again, that's exactly what other automated tools, Nessus and Qualys, does. So these guys kind of perform the scan, provide generate reports, and then share it with you, and then you can go review them, and then probably take to the network team and tell them they need to fix the patches in their fix the vulnerabilities in the regular patching cycle. So the last point, convince someone with a budget that vulnerability management is important, is always crucial. That CISOs, CTOs needs to know that vulnerability management is very important. If you leave any unpatched or machine which has got vulnerabilities, that will impact your organization in a very bad way. So yeah, the last slide again, don't spend another dime on security until you understand how to. So you need to really understand what you're trying to protect, how crucial is that, what it impacts, why you have kind of kept it in place first of all, so that then you really understand the impact of patching, and you can spread the same message to other technology folks as well. So protect the right assets from the right threats with the right measures is what the vulnerability management is all trying to strive about. Any questions, Shushma, there?
No.
Okay. Okay, let me check. So have you worked with Niceties or Qualys, Sushma, earlier?
No, actually, I'm from electronic basis,
Okay,
so I don't
okay,
have any idea about this.
okay, no problems. So okay. So I am installing Niceties right now. Let me quickly go through this. So okay,
Okay.
sorry. Let me share screen. Yep. So you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Niceties is a vulnerability scanner, right? So it's like a Qualys or any other scanner. So what vulnerability scanners do is, like, they have built-in port scanners or vulnerability scanners. They've got a lot of signatures built into them, um, like a signature which can identify something, a vulnerability, right? So what they do is they scan the environment. They have their agents which kind of get installed on every system. These agents scan the machine against the all known bad signatures, and then if any of the bad signatures is able to run properly, they'll flag it that this particular machine is vulnerable for a specific exploit, right? So that's the way these vulnerability scanners really work. So they have the technology and the software or the capability to kind of identify, look deeper into the operating system, look deeper into the application, and then kind of understand the vulnerability. So even you can create a specific scan. So suppose I want to only scan the operating system vulnerabilities, then it will only look for operating system based vulnerabilities. But if you also say that the scan should also look for application operating system based vulnerabilities, then it will look for both application and operating system based vulnerabilities, right? So you look at the key features here. Identified vulnerabilities that allow remote attackers to access sensitive information, um, right? So that's what we talked about. Check whether the system on the network has the latest software patches. Yes, that's what it also does. It looks at the current patches which are already installed. So if it thinks that the patches are not being updated, uh, and it kind of gives you a list of all the patches and then the last install date. Based on that, you can come to a conclusion that okay, these patches are not updated properly, and somebody, you should go and let the network team or the server team to let them know that they need to start patching up these servers or the desktops. The one what vulnerability management also does is it tries using common default passwords and system accounts. So when you buy a switch or a router or a firewall, it comes with a basic username password, right? So when that really happens, it's easy for an attacker to understand what devices you have and then use these default passwords to get in, and then once and then go add his own configuration or add a specific route onto a switch or a router, so that he can easily come in and go out. That's a risk which is very very real. And then your vulnerability management system or scanner kind of helps you understand what's the defaults in your organization currently set to. Then it looks at configuration audits. So your current firewalls, current router switches in your servers, Linux servers or Windows for that matter. It looks at the current configurations, and then kind of perform an audit if you have that particular scan going on. So it kind of says that what is the appropriate setting, or these type of settings should have been by their default, or if the settings which you have is not appropriate, you should add that. You should have that. So that's something which that scanner or the scan will tell you. Then you have your analysis as well, like what is the exposure percentage of the vulnerability which is identified, what it how easily it's easy to exploit, and then it kind of lets you know or give a detailed description about what the vulnerability is and what the CV is and where the patches is, and all the write-ups about it. It can also do mobile device audits and then perform customized reporting as well. So it can also, these VMs or these vulnerability management systems or scanners can actually perform scans on your tabs, phones as well. So now they are coming with this capability as well. Yeah. So you have your, you can perform like external scan where, the scan facing external host which provides services to the host. It can scan all the 65,535 ports to the target machine. So basically the external scan means that the scanner is sitting outside of your organization, and it scans to all the perimeter IP addresses wherever it's reachable, or and then scans them for all the ports which are open yet. So look at all the services, try to identify fingerprint, and then kind of give the version numbers as well as which will be visible to, or which are being visible to all the attackers as well who are like doing this or trying to come in. Then you have your internal network scan, which is like the scanner is inside the organization, which is performing these scans. So what this scans basically does is, since it has got authenticated scans. So external scans can be authenticated, can be unauthenticated as well. So it means unauthenticated scans are nothing but when like an attacker will not have the credentials to log in. So he will, what he can enumerate is what the external unauthenticated scans will be able to do. When you talk about external scans which are authenticated, so it means you are providing the credentials to an application or to a network, to the scanner, so that once an authenticated user comes in, if he wants to attack an organization, like attack an application, what he can see, right, is what the scanner will try to do. So it looks at an attacker which doesn't have any credentials, but it also looks at an attacker who has the credentials, what damage he can provide. So both ways it looks at it. Again, internal is like the scanners is within the organization, so that will have access to touch or talk to or connect to all the network devices, or the desktops or servers. So that's easy for it to kind of enumerate and let you know that what exactly is happening without any problem. Then you have your web application, web app testing. So your web application testing is nothing but your scanner is basically looking at your web application, like suppose Apache or IIS, or for Java, or with any web technology which has been deployed. Like you have your what do you call uh, what is that, WordPress, or you have got any other technology which is there out there to create a web technologies or web applications. So the scanner is specifically targeting any web application. When you scan that, it kind of looks at all the parameters, all the different areas, and then since it has all the signatures built in, it kind of lets you know that this web application has got these technologies, and these technologies have got these vulnerabilities identified, and that kind of helps the web application developers to go and quickly fix them. Um, the other web application testing can also be like password randomization, or cross-site scripting, insecure deserialization, XXC, CSRF, SQL injection. So all these type of attacks is what the web application or this VM scanner will try to do and perform, and let you know that that particular server is vulnerable to cross-site scripting or to a SQL injection. So you can create a new policy. Policies are nothing but vulnerability test. There are 4 default policies. You have got external network scan, internal web app, and then you have got your PCI DSS scan. So these are all templates, basically saying that, what are these policies, how there is a scan, and then you can create your own scan as well, I think. So let me see, I am trying. Yep. Okay, let me stop the share and share the screen. Yep. So here, so if you see this new scan, you can see a lot of, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yep. So you can see a lot of default templates here. So you can say audit cloud infrastructure, bad log detection, bash, advanced scan, host discovery. You have got malware scan, internal PCI, and you have got a lot of standard scans which you can use. And then you say that basic network scan. So if I say, this is my basic network scan, I say test scan, and then say discovery. You have all ports, then you have assessment, you have reports, you have got scan type. So default, you can save it. So this is a policy which you created, right? So you can click it, and then let's say, suppose what happens. Okay, you created a possible. Okay, so now you created at least a policy which says basic network scan, and then you've got your scanners here, your local scanners, plugin rules, your policies, my scans. You can start a new scan. You can say this one. Okay, what happened there? There is some problem with my Nessus. So yeah, let me do this. Let me at least show you around. There is a mismatch. I think it's, yeah. So you can create a policy, right? You can see all these things here. You can come back and create a basic policy, and you can provide a credentials as to, just a second, just a second. Sorry. So yeah, when you're creating your basic scan policy, you can provide the credentials which the scanner can utilize, and and then probably you can have your SSH and Windows for Unix or Linux, so that the scanner can connect and then perform these scans. Right. So now you can use any of the plugins to kind of choose the plugin. For that matter, you have your Cisco or any of, like, as I said, what is that you're trying to scan, what is the target of your scan, right? Is just a port scan, FTP, or for that matter general scan, or you are looking at a specific application, you can do that, and then scan it, and then click on the save button. It'll save as a scan, as a policy here, right? It automatically redirects to the page. Yeah, you can see that. Hold on a second. So you can click on a new scan, then you create a new scan. You can schedule a scan here, general schedule, and then you can provide the credentials and the plugins as well for the scan as well, right? And then you perform the scan. It performs the scan, and it basically gives you a pie chart of all the vulnerabilities which are out there, right? You got 26 vulnerabilities from the scan, I think, which I did, or I think, yeah, I think it's not, yeah. And then once you click on the vulnerabilities, you'll be able to see, you'll be able to see all the vulnerabilities which are out there in the application there, or on the server, or desktop. And then you need to go back and finalize and test it. You can go perform the testing. So this is how basically your Niceties scan will look like, and then the results will look like. And again, in a corporate network, in a network environment where, like an organization, these all vulnerabilities will be tracked down by the host, or by the vulnerability itself, and then based on the severity, like high, if you can see here, you have got critical and high. So high is there, and you have a critical at the bottom probably. So based on the criticality of it, and then based on the availability of, if at all you're using a Cisco device, then I think you would definitely want to go ahead and patch it as soon as possible based on the patching cycle. So in a nutshell, that's exactly what your I mean, like, your vulnerability scanners do. They perform the scan, but just that you have a lot of things which you want to connect to, and you have to, your authentication mechanisms, your settings, your scans, right? So you can download Niceties from the site. You can go to tenable.com, and then you can install it from here. Sorry, yeah, where is it? You can download it from here. This is your Windows 10 version. You can download it here. Once you download, you can get an activation key. So when you register, put your given email ID, and registered with this, you'll get a free activation code to your email address, which you can use to register your product. Hold on a second. What is this? Any questions, Sushma, so far?
No.
Okay. So, I mean, like, what I would expect you to do is, again, this would be the last class. If you have any questions, do let me know. But I would want you to go and install Splunk. If you have done it, that's well and good. Practice on it. Install Niceties. I'll also provide
Okay.
you the semantic endpoint protection, the tool. Um, and then dump off it so that you can also install that. But have you understood the vulnerability concept, like the vulnerability management, at least in a nutshell?
Yeah.
Okay. So ignore this. Retry. Yeah. Retry. Oh. So any questions or doubts from earlier classes as well?
I missed some classes. I should go through it now.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Okay. So what I'll do today, or like, if let's meet tomorrow around at 2 o'clock for, let's say, say half an hour. The Nessus is getting still installed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the scans, looking at the vulnerabilities. Okay, let's
Okay.
wait. If it happens today, we'll finish it off today itself. This would take a lot of time. Okay, sure. What let's do is, see, wait. Okay, this seems to be going faster. No, wait. I mean, like, it took like half an hour for earlier this page to kind of run. Now it's running faster.
Okay.
Uh, okay, let's see. Ah, targets. Oh, perfect. Now it's running. So now I've got my WASP BWA. So it's 192.168.0.107. 192.168.0.107. Run a scan. So now this is running a scan. So if we can see a packet capture, okay, let me run a packet capture. So we got 0.107. Ah, there it is. IP.addr. So this is what you're seeing, all part of the traffic between this and this. So when I'm searching this, it can be this. Mhm. Yeah. Yep. Now you're seeing a lot of 107s. Yeah, I can go and look at a TCP stream. You don't have. Oh, sorry, you have. Yeah. You see, there's a lot of. It's trying to say Unix Samba work group, right? So it's trying to enumerate that. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Then you've got here. What you've got here? You can do a TCP stream. Let it run. Yeah. Okay. Then you got market. You've got SMB here. SMB is what it's trying to do. SMB service message blocks is trying to connect to SMB. Okay. Is my scans failing? No, it is. It's running. So you can see, okay, we have got a lot of mediums, low, and informationals here. And it's still running. It's not yet done. So if let's say, suppose I open a SMB. So when you open a vulnerability, you'll see a lot of activity here. So it says necessary detected the Samba bad luck patch has not been applied. So the bad luck or the port is 445 port, which is open on this particular IP address. And the version of SMB server on the Linux and Unix running on the remote is affected by a flaw known as bad luck that exists in security SAM or local security authority, LSAD. So you can understand about the vulnerability. You can go through the information. When was this released, or the vulnerability information and the risk information. So if you want to read more, you can go and read it from here more. But in a nutshell, you can read it from here. Right, then you have got a Unix operating system unsupported version detected. So it says that Ubuntu, it's a 2019, 2013, right? Ended in 2013. Support ended in 2013. The version which I'm running now, and in 2015, its support was ended for server. So it says it has identified outdated, unsupported vendor like operating system, which an attacker tries to come in. I don't have any patches. If I'm running it, then I'll be like on open gates for an attacker to come in. So that's like risky for me. So again, vulnerability scanners or Niceties can be used to scan your own machine as well. You don't need to scan, or only you can use it on the in the organization, but you can use it to scan your own machines. That will tell you like what vulnerabilities do you have, and then you can go start reading them about it, like a self-awareness kind of an activity for your own system. Like if you got multiple machines in your own at home, like a laptop, a desktop, and your like husband's, brothers, or anybody else's laptop which is connected to your own network, you can go take their IP address, put it in here, and you can just basically scan it. So you'll know basically what vulnerabilities do they have, and then kind of keep them aware of what needs to be patched first.